What's good, everybody? It's been a couple days. I know my team's down right now, 0-1, but breakdown on that is coming very, very soon. But welcome back to the Gifted Hoops podcast. My name is Gifted, and we're back today to talk about the 76ers and the Celtics series so far. I'm joined here by some passionate but very logical fans for the Boston Celtics and also the Philadelphia 76ers. I'm joined here first by my co-host of The Locker Room. Shout out to my guy, Derek. He also has his podcast that he's bringing back called Not Just Dribble. But Derek, feel free to introduce yourself to the people.
Hey, what's up? Good to be back, Gifted. We just recently did an episode on Not Just Dribble, as you just mentioned, talking about the Sixers and talking about the previous series your team had with Golden State and Sacramento. That was a lot of fun. Still working on putting that out, hopefully this evening. But yeah, looking forward to talk about my team. I really wish we could have just done game one and I didn't have game two to talk about as well. But hey, we will talk about both. But yeah, appreciate being here.
Yeah, and I'm joined here today by my second guest. Shout out to Kiana, a great Celtics fan, passionate, very hard on her team, very logical. Kiana, feel free to introduce yourself to the people.
Hi, my name is Kiana Matthews. I'm not a podcaster, so I don't have anything like that to plug. I'm just a regular old diehard Celtics fan. Very excited to discuss both of the games, both of them.
I love how she rubbed in both of them for you, Dave.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Well, right now in the 2023 playoffs, the Celtics are matched up with the Sixers. I think coming in, this was a series that people overwhelmingly just had Boston outright winning. I do think for the Sixers, this is a very important playoffs because if they lose, they will not beat the second round allegations, number one. But two, the fact that the Bucks, who are a team that a lot of people said was in the same tier as Boston, split from everyone else in the East, have lost. So whoever comes out of this series ideally is in a great position to actually advance to the finals. But so far, the Sixers stole home court advantage. They came in game one. James Harden dialed the clock back, 45-point performance. I called Derek at the beginning of that game and I told him, listen, Derek, James Harden can get you one. He was pessimistic. He shrugged it off. He's only 5 for 6. Finishes the game with 45 points with an epic game one dagger on Al Horford. I would love to hear your guys' reaction to that game first before we get to game two.
Triggered to the Trae Young shot. I was very triggered.
Oh, jeez. Yeah. You've already gone through it once. Yeah, I mean, I wasn't triggered. I was, I think, still just shocked. Every shot James was knocking down, I was in utter shock. I think he might have hit 10 middies in game one, which was just a fantastic sight to see. Yeah, he was stellar. Absolutely stellar. I have to eat my words. I was absolutely pessimistic on James Harden all season, and that includes the playoffs. But game one, he showed out, and that's really the reason why the series is 1-1.
With Embiid out, you, of course, it's everything kind of falls on Harden. You would hope Maxey, of course, would give you a little something, but mainly you're looking at Harden, and we didn't have an answer for him throughout that whole entire game, and he literally from tip off to the fourth made bucket after bucket after bucket, and just when we thought we had a little bit of momentum, nope, he came down the court and scored another bucket. And so as a Celtics fan, it was like just horrible to watch. As a basketball fan, it was phenomenal to watch. And at the end, I love Al, but he just got cooked after getting cooked all game. To get cooked on the last shot like that was just awful. But shout out to Harden. He earned it.
I gotta say, man, like that game as a fan watching it was crazy because Boston was on absolute fire in that first half. I mean, 74% from the field. Every shot was literally going in. But at the same time, for DeAnthony Melton to come through with 5 humongous threes and they just kept leaving him wide open and he didn't hesitate for a minute. He took the ball, grabbed his shot immediately, made his shots. James Harden getting it going early with Tyrese Maxey kind of struggling, like for them to have still been in the game really spoke to, well, in my opinion, Boston taking their foot off of the gas defensively. I think game one was really about the Celtic defense, but I feel like it was more so them saying Embiid's not playing, we can play with our food, and that's kind of what led to the game one. Now they did come back for game two, which we got to get to that too. That did happen, right? But just the poise of the Sixers to come in and just play as hard as they can. I mean, Paul Reed coming in down the stretch with 4 big free throws to help them clinch the game. It was high level basketball.
They were all like nothing but net. Like they were just like, it was like he was like a 20-year vet. Like he just knocked them down with all the confidence in the world. He was phenomenal game one for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think D'Anthony Melton, like to your point, Gifted, I mean, he was just such an underrated pickup for a late first round pick. It was just very opportunistic. And I mean, I think he's been sensational. D'Anthony Melton would be, like an all defensive 4th team if that thing existed. Not quite as good as, maybe some Celtic players, but no, really, really good perimeter defender. So he's been huge. And yeah, I mean, the Sixers really weathered a storm in game one. I think Harden kind of overshadowed the fact that Boston was 58% from the field, executed their game plan pretty damn well. I think offensively, I just think defensively, which we can still talk about because I think that's still relative to game two, despite the Sixers building houses in Boston. I think it's still important to talk about because as much as I love the Celtics team this year from afar, not actually loving it, but appreciating them, I think their defense is definitely different under Mazzulla as opposed to Udoka. So I'm curious, Keanu, your thoughts kind of on that. Like, what are the changes you may have seen in the regular season and then so far in the playoffs through, a round and a half?
Yeah, well, to just back up a little bit with what Gifted was saying, the game one was a game that I've seen multiple times throughout the regular season. It happened when we played the Jazz. It happened when we played the Wizards with no Bradley Beal and no Kuz. It happened when we played the Rockets. It happened when we played OKC. It happened I could keep going. It's a thing that I've seen time and time again where teams that have lesser talent are missing their star player. We tend to just get into shootouts with them and think that after you let role players get confidence, role players and stars get into rhythm for 3 quarters, you think in the 4th quarter you can just turn on defense and shut the water off. And you would think after doing it multiple times during the regular season, during the playoffs, they would learn. They didn't. They did it in the Hawks series, and then they did it game one. So they at this point, I have to believe what they've shown me. And they've shown me that when they have the opportunity to really just go for the kill, it's a letdown every time. And they put themselves in situations to where that next game is a must win, or, you have to really dig deep and go all out because they needed to win game 2, and they did. But that's just been frustrating as a fan all year to watch. The defense, honestly and truly, that was the best defense we played all playoffs since game 2. Games 3, 4, 5, 6 against the Hawks, they weren't playing defense. I mean, during the stretch down game 6, they made stops and we were able to pull out a close win. But as far as consistent defense throughout the whole series, it was not there. I mean, the shooters for the Hawks were getting whatever they wanted against us. We've honestly had a pretty tough time defending the 3 all year, to be honest. I don't know why there is such a drastic difference. The defense has been good. If you look at the numbers, I think we ended top 2 or top 3 this year. The defensive numbers in the playoffs, I think we're out of the 16 teams that started, I think we're 14 or 15th. It's really bad. But it's an effort thing. It's there. I forgot who we played before we played the Bucks, but then we played the Bucks, and you're wow, they can actually play defense. The defense between game 1 and game 2 of the series was night and day. they just feel like they can relax, and they can't. Our pick and roll defense has been pretty bad this whole year, with like quick guards. That's killed us. So for me, it's the talent is still there. We still have all the defensive players. We've we have Rob this playoff and he's healthy, but it's just an effort thing for me. And it's annoying, but to me it's mainly an effort thing. They need to clean it up if they want to actually make a push.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because I think if you end up facing the Heat next series, I think that would be nasty on multiple fronts. I want to ask about Rob Will real quick, Kiana, because I was told from some Celtic fans that the reason he's just not starting is because of health. So obviously the injury he got last playoff run. Look, it's Twitter, so I don't expect
okay.
It's not verified sources. But I'm curious to Rob Will's health, and I really like. I was gonna say agility is really my main question, especially defensively. But his overall production, I know he had a procedure that kind of could at least shorten his career long term down the line. So we could come back last year, which is a really tough decision, but understandable, especially given the situation. How do you feel Rob Will has been this season, the games he's played, and in this small sample we have? Like how is he as the backup five, or sometimes the five next to Horford?
Yeah, I mean, I think health wise, from what I know, from and I don't have a contact, but just from listening to the quotes and him speaking and Missoula speaking, I think health wise he's fine. They did a good job when he came back. He didn't play back-to-backs. They gave him a couple extra days here to rest. And they kept his minutes relatively low. I think he was playing like 20 minutes a game. Towards the end of the season, they ramped him up to try to get him to the 30-minute playoff numbers.
Mm-hmm.
But he hasn't been playing a lot. I was very frustrated game one. He didn't really play a lot. There have been moments in the Hawks series where I'm like, wow, where's Rob? Was it I went to game 4. Game 4 in the Hawks series, he was very important. The rebounding that he did was very, very important, because rebounding is a big issue for us. And I don't know. I think it's really just Joe and his lineups. He likes the lineups where we can go 5 out and space to 4. And he's not, just from what I've seen, he's not really a big fan of the double big lineup. Like, we'll get it for a little bit, and then he'll take it away from us. And we're all we want to see Rob and Al, or we want to see Grant and Rob, or we want to see 2 bigs out there. But I think the first game he didn't really play that much. I think he was okay. I think the second game his impact was felt a little bit more.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think game 1, especially without Embiid, we were able to just throw it up. He had a lot of lobs. Of course, he's a lob threat. But I would love to see him play more, to have more of a defensive impact, because I think a lot of people are saying, well, what's the difference between the defense this year and last year? Well, they could play more aggressive when Rob is back there cleaning stuff up, right? And this year, Al has been great for moments, but if you get past the perimeter and you have old man Al, depending on the matchup, sometimes that's just cooked. It's just it's not the same. When you put Rob in, you can see people are either scared to go to the rim, or he'll get a block, or he'll alter a shot. And I honestly just think he's not playing enough. But I think game 1 was okay. Game 2 was much better effort. And I'm hoping, and we got to see the double big more in game 2.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm hoping that happens more in game 3. I also think that, if I remember correctly, I think that Joe was matching his minutes with when Embiid was off the floor, so that Embiid can't roam off of him. So I think that's another thing. Joe's really big on spacing.
Right.
So he likes it when there's 5 guys out, which I think we'll also see more Grant in the series too because of that. But those are my thoughts.
I want you to know that I am a huge fan of the double big lineup, and I say that because
Me too.
it helps out because now you have Al Horford spacing, right? But now Rob Will can be the guy who's the shot blocker, and they have more size on the glass as well. Last year, it paid you really good margins by having them. I think this year the biggest difference is outside of the coaching change, the emergence of Smart and White. You know what I'm saying? Like which guard to, have close out games, I feel like has been kind of in the air. Like Smart has been like the trusted guy, but at times his choices down the stretch can sometimes have you scratch your head. But this year, White has been just a marvel in terms of his defense and his 3-point shooting. So to have, Al be the lone big out there sometimes does make sense. But I think fundamentally your defensive ceiling with those two bigs just makes way more sense in my opinion.
I would agree. But I think Joe has shown us that he likes the lineup with either Al or either Rob. So that's what we're stuck with.
All right, so Derek, is there anything else that you want to praise about the Sixers from game one before we get into the beatdown that was game two?
Gotta give Paul Reed some love, Derek.
Yeah, no, I mean that's true. Honestly, I think Paul was still solid in game two as well. I think it just got overshadowed because it was a colossal beatdown, and the Sixers as a team just could not shoot. But yeah, I mean, in game one he was huge. I think like the Sixers are super excited. I mean, fans included, that it looks like Paul Reed could be the backup center for Embiid for the foreseeable future, which is something Philadelphia has been desperate to find. I mean, we've had to suffer through Greg Monroe minutes in vital playoff situations.
Those are bad minutes. I'm sorry, those are bad minutes.
I mean, 12 minutes basically cost us a series. So it's hard. It's hard to relive that. We already went through the Al Horford experience, and I don't know what it is in Boston, if they've got some holy grail water or what, but he just plays better up north.
You know darn well he was not a good fit in Philadelphia.
I mean, but here's the thing. I mean, on paper, it's not the best fit in the world, especially when he first got back to Boston. He just started doing everything better. Everything that we wanted Al to do here,
quite literally
really
do. He did better.
like his shooting improved. I swear he was a better passer once he got back to Boston. I mean, look, I can give some of it to the system he's put in is better suited for his game, but he's just a better defender in Boston. And it's not like that had to fall off a cliff when he got here, but it sure didn't look pretty. So it was nasty. But yeah, I think it was just seeking that backup big. I think Paul Reed is that. He still has at least like 4 possessions a game where I'm just saying, oh, please stop. Oh, okay, cool. And it's not
last game where he did the behind the back pass.
Yeah, exactly.
That was great.
It was great. It was awful until it wasn't, because it was screaming turnover the entire time. And then he found that it's like, you know what? Maybe he's onto something. So yeah, Paul is officially out of the mud, and I love that for him. And I think he's going to be big this series because, to your point, I think Rob Will tends to get the matchup when Reed is in the game, and it's going to be an absolute fight for rebounds. Both of them, that's kind of their calling card. If one of them is not successful in that venture, then their respective coach is probably going to pull them. So they both kind of have to duke it out. Because Reed is, essentially a non-shooter, which is a shame because I feel like he could be a better spacer than he is right now. But I just think he has to play extra cautious, and Rivers has definitely had like a very short leash. He's been very willing to pull Reed out. Which, yeah, I mean, I guess also kind of leads into rotation, which I think game 2 was more evidence of. But the bench actually showed up in game 1, especially Melton held it down, but I think guys were just better at rotating, better at making the extra pass. They were talking a bit more, and I think that was kind of like the teetering factor in the seesaw, on top of Harden being sensational. But yeah, I mean, in game 2, the story flipped, and aside from the starting five not being good, the bench was horrific.
I think that's what you typically see. Like, we've had games, I mean, y'all saw it when we played y'all, when we're down 3 starters, JB goes down, and then like all of a sudden the people that are on the bench like step up. So I
Right.
think that was kind of like, hate that the Celtics just relaxed, but like that's something that I think people could have predicted, was that everybody would have banded together and get win the extra 10% to like give them a chance to actually get the
Yep.
win, and that's what I did.
Right. I mean, I guess just to kind of lead into game 2, I mean, there's been so many big, player shifts this season, like Brunson becoming a New York Knick and becoming a bona fide star. That's probably the top of the list for best player acquisition. But Malcolm Brogdon deserves to be in that conversation. And in game 2, he was exactly what
He was like that in game 2, man. He was like that.
I mean, he was everything the doctor ordered. I mean, 23 points in 24 minutes, 6 rebounds, and even though his assist numbers didn't look so like good, he was definitely creating opportunities. And it was just criminal to see the Celtics get a hold of him for seemingly nothing from the Pacers. It was gross, honestly, because I was desperate to get a hold of, because he's
Absolute
exactly what
steal.
the Sixers have needed. Like, he is a taller point guard. I think he's like 6'5". He's got like a little like weight to him, but still moves his feet fairly well defensively. So like and you just have such a luxury because you have White and Smart, who White I think is all defensive first team this season. Smart,
Thank
I
you.
think
Everybody keeps saying second team, and I'm like,
He's first team.
first
to,
team.
to me he's first team. I think it's him and Caruso. No disrespect to Smart, I just don't think he was the same he was last year.
Smart should even make the team.
Right. And I don't, matter of fact, I'm not sure if I even have him in second team, but
Like,
either way,
if he makes it over White, I will be livid.
yeah, that would just go to show its reputation
Yeah, that would be
over
bad.
people actually seeing the production, because White has been overall, I think, the better starter, but you don't fall off very much at all defensively. And Smart, honestly, for what it's worth, Smart was good on Harden, I think, in both games. Harden made, I think, every single shot on Smart in game 1, but it's not like they weren't contested. Smart was still in the right spot. It just was a matter of he just couldn't stop Harden from making the shot. It was just better offense. But you go from White and Smart, and then your air quote downgrade is Brogdon, who I think more often than not is like slightly above average as a defender. Like, that's just such a luxury to have. And he is routinely coming off the bench. So I just think like that's huge. And he was probably like the real key player in game 2, because it was a really, team effort. But I mean, should we just open the conversation to, before we just, I guess, shift off from Brogdon? Like, we got to have a conversation about JT and JB, because I feel as though Celtic fans have been having this for the better part of 2 years, at least a year and some change after the finals.
I mean, I don't engage in that discourse, but it is
Okay.
Twitter. I mean, I don't, but it is for sure a thing.
Well, I guess, yeah, before we discuss that, like, what are your thoughts on Brogdon? I mean, has he been, just the gem that I've described him as?
I mean, he's phenomenal. I say that we have one of the best guard rotations in the league. We have, like you said, the luxury of, I think all 3 of them can start on a team in the NBA. Personally, that's how I feel. My goal for every game is all 3 of them don't have to be great, but I need 2 out of the 3 to be great. And I think for game 1, we got a good, like Derek White was bad. And then we had good Brog moments, and we had good Smart moments, and then we had bad Brog moments, and bad, like, it wasn't enough.
Mhm.
Game 3 or game 2, I mean, all of them really did good. Derek White had a slow first half, but he picked it up in the second half. So whenever 2 of the 3 guards play well, it's usually a game that we win. And that did not happen in game 1, especially down the stretch. But yeah, Brog has been amazing. I'm glad he won 6th Man of the Year. I had to fight with Knick fans on the app about that all year long. And Thankfully, he's not a playoff dropper like the other 6 Man of the Year candidate.
Oh wow, good shade, because he has
a
been
New York
struggling.
stray, a New York stray. Oh,
just telling y'all what I'm seeing. But he's been great. Whenever we need somebody to get downhill, get to the rack, he's there. Whenever we need a three, and I'm like, and then it goes in, I'm like, oh, that's great. His 3-point shooting's been great most of the year. There was a point where he couldn't buy a layup, and I was like, rather him to shoot threes than twos. But he's, got back on track, and he's just been great with just controlling the game at points of time when Marcus may be a little chaotic and maybe we're not getting the best White game. I think he's just been a great asset, and shout out to Brad Stevens for trading him for Aaron and Malik Fitz and I don't even know, Tice, whoever else was in the trade. It was a phenomenal pickup, and I'm happy that he chose to sacrifice and be in our team because he's going to make a world of difference if we can keep going deep into the playoffs. So,
I think what makes Brogdon so huge too is that you somehow have a third guy who's a blend of all styles, because he gets to the basket, he can pass well, he can handle pick and rolls, he's a bit quicker on his feet, and he has good point guard IQ, and just have multiple IQ players. It's kind of why people have Boston going to the finals and being that, well of a team, because sure, they might take their foot off the gas sometimes, but ultimately the talent, like pound for pound, I think Boston has the most talented roster in the NBA. It's just the execution of said talent consistently that some people might question, but absolute.
I would agree. They beat themselves multiple times, multiple times.
Every time with Kiana, she be noting this every time on the timeline. Like, our offense is our defense right now. We got to be better. But I feel it though, because you see firsthand the talent of your team on a night in, night out basis. So I get it. But
so what's up with the Jays, Derek? What's up?
Yeah, I mean, look, Gifted and I had this conversation in last year's finals, and I have stood by the stance that Jason Tatum, especially for like the duration of his career, was the clearly better player among the Jays, and that Brown would be really an excellent Robin to Tatum's Batman, and Brown would give you like really good production, but clearly there was just like a ceiling. But now it just feels like Brown is more often the consistency. So even when he's not giving you Batman type performances, Tatum is giving you less than Robin. So like Brown to me, to like go off like the comic book analogy, is really like Nightwing right now, where he's trying to get his independence, and it very much feels that way, especially from, the press stuff we had about a month and a half ago. And of course the Houston rumors with Coach Udoka and so on and so forth. So I just feel as though Brown's been stellar. That you saw in game 1, he only had 10 shots, was a clean 80%. So they kind of corrected themselves in game 2, but then game 2 got away from Philly so quick that he didn't even need to keep going. And it definitely seemed like he could. And then of course Tatum putting up a dud. I know you have said foul trouble was a leading cause, but even so, I think it's fair to say Tatum hasn't had like the most gorgeous playoffs. I think it was game 5 against Atlanta. Goes for like 19 on like 8 of 20, which is, I think has happened multiple times this playoffs already. And in the finals last year, especially the entire playoff run, all the turnovers, all the nasty shots, which I think was important for Boston. That's why I picked them to win the whole thing this year, just from like preseason, they're just the best team. Now they got the finals experience. They know how awful it is and how much it takes to actually get over the hump. That's why I figured they could do it. But I don't know. I mean, Tatum's decision making, I think, while improved, does still leave me like, can he really be a lead ball handler? Can he really be, late game decision maker? I can get a bucket, get to the free throw line, but also set up my teammates super well. And I don't know. I mean, his team won with his worst game, which, is good for him, but it definitely doesn't paint a prettier picture.
Yeah, well, so these are my just overall thoughts as a Celtics fan. I typically don't get into the JT versus JB thing. Not a Jason stan. I'm not a Jalen stan. I'm a Celtics fan. So quite honestly, JT could put up a stat line of 3, 4, 5 being negative 25. If we win the game, I don't care. I think if you're trying to evaluate him as a player and rank him, then of course that matters. And I think that if you're trying to say without that guy, the Celtics can't go far in the playoffs, and I guess that matters. But I think yesterday was a testament to the type of team that Brad Stevens built. That in some matchups against some teams, we just need one of the Jays to go off, and we can still win if the others show up and contribute what they're supposed to contribute. I think if we're going to compare how they played, I think the Atlanta series, I think JB started off really bad and really slow. And there's this, and I don't want to I hate doing stuff like this, but I'm trying to be objective, but there's this notion that JB has just been incredible all playoffs. And I'm like, did y'all watch the first couple of games of the Hawks?
Yeah.
He was not good.
Yeah.
He was not good at all. I went to game 3, he was okay. I went to game 4 live. The first half, he was awful. Took off his mask, and then he turned it up, and that was phenomenal, and we needed it. We pulled that out. But game 4, that second half is when he started to play well. And I won't take anything away. The games 1 and games 2, he was very efficient in the Philly series, and we needed every point in the first game to just make it a game. He second half didn't really get up that many shots, but he had a lot of turnovers and at bad times. We start the second half and a turnover leads to a fast break point, and then we're trying to get stay in it, and then another turnover leads to a fast break point. He gets tunnel vision and dribbles into traffic, and it's kind of the same thing that we saw last year. So I don't say that to try to say that JT has been better than him, but he just hasn't this imagination of what JB has been this playoff run. I'm not seeing what the people are seeing. I think JT has had some I think he's had 3 inefficient games. I think he's had 3 really good games and 3. How many games have we played? 6, 8 games. Mm-hmm. So 4 inefficient games. This game or the last game, he was inefficient and pretty much just bad. There are times where he's efficient or inefficient, but affects the game in different ways. Even though he had the highest plus minus last game, which is crazy out of the whole entire team.
Plus minus is such a terrible stat, though. I mean, it's not to disagree with your overall points, but I look at plus minus all the time, and it makes little sense.
That literally proves that it's stat you should be going.
Jimmy Butler, I think, has a bottom 6 plus minus or a bottom net rating this playoffs. Yeah, and
it's crazy.
Let's just throw the stat away. I mean, if
it works
you're
well
watching
if you have a
games,
bigger sample size of minutes,
right?
But 4 or 5 games is not really enough to really gauge impact.
I mean, and even then, Gifted, it's if you have whether it could be any one of your star players. If he's with 3 or 4 bench guys who are not going to really build leads, they're really just in to just preserve and stop a potential avalanche. Then it's never going to look pretty. So I plus minus just drives me absolutely nuts. Because I feel like it does a horrific job of telling the story. But yeah, no, I think to your point, I look at Brown. I see that he's averaging 29 on amazing efficiency in the last 5 games. So that includes Philly in the last 3 games at Atlanta. And I'm just again, I'm not saying Brown's better.
Tatum and Brown are both averaging 26.
Yeah.
the playoffs. But of course, Brown
Right.
is super more efficient than Tatum. But yeah.
Right. So I guess it's just what is I don't want to say what is his ceiling, because I think that's a question I've been thinking about. I agree with like your point that, as long as you're winning ball games, you don't really care who's better. I just wonder, I think it's cliche, but superstars win you championships. That rule hasn't really been broken.
I think that's what gets people, is that we have all this talent, but they don't think we have that guy to actually get us through.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that's kind of what my thing is. It's just like, I think Tatum has improved from what that last playoff run was. But I'm still like, is he really going to outplay a Steph Curry, a Jokic, in like a LeBron and AD? Like, can you really count on him to be the number one producer in a final series?
Yeah. I think what we're seeing from Tatum, especially this year, is that the efficiency is still not consistent. And so that's something that I would hope to see we build upon and gets better over time. But I can't sit here and say and guarantee you that in the finals he's going to put up 28, 10-4, 10-6, and it's going to be efficient and he's going to be two-way. And I'm not going to say he's going to outplay Steph or AD, who just had a phenomenal game. Like, I cannot guarantee you that. I think what we have is the luxury of two guys that can go off for 60 together and not have their best day, and the other guy can be really amazing, and that works. Now, is that a recipe for a championship? We'll have to find out this year to see if that is going to cut it or not. Because like you said, usually there's a team that has that guy. And I think the consensus around the NBA is that the Celtics don't have that guy. They have two guys that are pretty much on the same level that are trying to essentially beat the odds. And, two guys are going to have to outplay Steph, or two guys are going to have to outplay LeBron or Joker, if that's who we, whoever, or Joel Embiid. I know he's not fully healthy, but I think that theory will be tested, because I can't sit here with a straight face, given what Tatum has done this year and what he's done so far, and say that he's going to give you that stat line with that efficiency. I can say for sure he will affect the game defensively. I can say for sure he'll be a great rebounder. I can say for sure he'll, his playmaking has improved. I can say he'll affect the game in other ways, but the efficiency argument and the out-dueling argument and the consistently, sometimes he'll get really hot for a half and then the second half may cool off, or maybe the fourth quarter may not, give us enough points, and it may be somebody else that does that. That's just how we played all year. So I don't know. And if that may be our downfall, we'll have to find out this year. So that would be my answer. But I think we've done it by committee all year. And I don't really see that changing right now, just to be honest.
I appreciate that answer a lot, because people often look at the best player, right? It's flashy, it matters, he's the guy who does X, Y, or Z, but the roster construction behind that player is equally as important, because if you don't have a strong roster of players who can make up for that player at their lows or complement that player at their highs, you can't really win. And year in, year out, we've seen players just have monster, performances, but at the same time, they have key players on their team that come through in their role, and they're why they're able to win. You know what I'm saying? Last year, right? Steph played phenomenal basketball all series long, but Andrew Wiggins was right there in terms of his role defensively, being able to go get a basket and put up 16 or 15 rebounds.
Make it hurt even more, Gifted. Just make me hurt even more.
Hey, listen.
He said, "Oh, I completely forgot the Celtics were right there." Yeah.
Yeah. I just I feel like your team has such good roster construction. It's just a matter of the execution of it. For me, in my opinion, I think Tatum has gotten better. We did a entire film thread on him, And like we saw the improvements in his game, Derek, but it's like as the year progressed after February, his consistency kind of dipped, even though he was still, putting up 30. Like he still shows that he has an impact to change the game when his shot is not falling, but the consistency of those performances when he's not efficient isn't always there. Like to me, if you are a superstar player, even if you don't shoot the ball well, I know consistently you will find a way to play make, bend the defense, all this and all that. Tatum has shown me that on the defensive side for sure. I agree with that. But in terms of being able to consistently put it together, that's what this post-season run for Boston to me is really for. And again, in a series of this magnitude against a Sixers team that A, has not beaten the fraud allegation, number one, and number two, their superstar player also has questions. So to me, this is a very interesting matchup, especially seeing that we now get to see Joel Embiid on the court for the rest of this playoff series. Derek, I'm wondering.
He's listed as questionable. Derek, I hope this man plays basketball on Friday.
Oh, he's questionable, Kiana?
I think he's playing. But before we segue into Embiid, my final point. I mean, I agree with basically everything you said, Kiana, in reference to Tatum. I think it's, I was at the game in Philly. Oh, geez, what was this, like 2 months ago when Tatum hits the game winner, and it was forgotten he had a bad game. I mean, it was all over the place.
Scoring wise, he hasn't had a good game against y'all all year. Besides, if you want to count the first half of game one. Right.
Yeah, no, it's completely true. And then, that's the thing. He stays with it. He hits the game winner, and it's like, well, shoot, if that happens, if you're a Celtics fan, all's forgotten. Who cares? You get the dub. But yeah, I just think Tatum, I think regardless of how, if the Celtics escape this round, I think it's very likely they're going to face the Heat in the next round, and then whoever they face, theoretically in a Western, from the West in the finals. I just really worry, or wonder, I should say, about his decision making the end of games, because it's just, you need that like superstar player to put it all together in crunch time. And I just think like you said, the wildly unpredictable efficiency, I think, is the only thing keeping him out of bona fide superstar. Gifted remembers, earlier this year we did the superstar conversation, and we went back and forth. I think I wanted Tatum in, and he would be like the very bottom, because I think there's definitely some guys clearly ahead of him, at least for right now. But he was like on the outside looking in, because we just didn't want to, we just couldn't give him the title necessarily, especially with last year's finals performance being fresh in everyone's minds. Which again, it was bad, but they did make the finals, and aside from Steph going supernova, they were right there. I think a lot of people discredit what the Celtics actually did in that series. So he's very close. I just think you need that last kind of push. And there's questions about that. And yes, there are questions about my player. And it kills me that we cannot ever have a fully healthy Joel Embiid to actually evaluate. It kills me, because if we lost this series and Embiid and the rest of the team is fully healthy, I can kind of go down on the sword. Okay, I can be fine with that. If the Celtics are just a better team, of which I think they're a better roster, and I do think, even though Rivers outcoached Mazzulla in game one, I still kind of think Mazzulla's a better coach. But that could just be my offensive bias. Mazzulla's just a better offensive mind.
I'm just trying to see the rest of the playoffs before I can accurately judge Mr.
That's
Joe.
fair. That's fair. He is still an actual rookie.
That's fair. Yeah.
But yeah, in reference to Embiid, yeah, I mean, he can be questionable Friday. He's going to play. I wanted this man to miss this past game. I was really hoping it's look, we stole one. We did our job. Let this man rest. His logic, he said in his press conference, was that I want to get this out of the way. Kind of, it's more about getting my feet and getting NBA cardio, NBA game cardio back.
That was a good idea.
Which, yeah, in that logic, it makes sense.
Yeah,
but then it's he also only played, I think, 27, 28 minutes. And we knew it wasn't going to be pretty. That wasn't the issue. It's just the game got away from you so quick for the team. So you're not even really playing the 37 to 39 minutes. You're probably going to have to play later in the series. So, like, did he get his feet wet and back under him? Maybe, but I don't know that he's anywhere close to getting like that game, balance back. And he's still hurt. I mean, at the end of the day, he's not going to be fully healthy, even if this thing goes 7. Like, that's just the sad truth of it. I wish I could say he would be, but this injury takes at least a month, and we don't have a month. So, I'm hoping we get 90% of Joel if this thing goes 6 or 7.
I mean, I think he said after the game, I think he said like 4 to 6 weeks is what it's supposed to be. So he
Right.
should, but I think I agree with him playing because at least he gets some run. I think if he doesn't play, how he looked yesterday is how he would look at home on Friday.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I think, he didn't play the full game, but at least you got out there. The team hasn't played with him in a little minute. Y'all can try to get acclimated, back playing together. I don't know if I don't think he was like running in practice with them. So I think
No,
this is
he
a
wasn't.
good like feel it out game. I think we were going to win regardless. So I think just get him out there, get him back running around, get him with the team. Therefore, he gets, the jitters out or the trial run out. And then Friday, get his MVP award. And, I think we'll see he's still hurt, but I think we'll see a little bit of a better version of him.
My biggest question with the Embiid domino, and I kind of said this, right? Like, I figured Boston would drop one game primarily because of the way that they dealt with Atlanta. Like, once a star player doesn't play, I feel like Boston is more susceptible to letting one go. But in game 2, they handled their business to make up for it and they dominated. But my question is, James Harden to me all year long has shown that in the non-Embiid minutes, he's more confident in himself being the guy to score and do more things. I feel like last game, he didn't know what quite to do with himself. He wasn't making the shots. He wasn't getting downhill as much. He just didn't seem like the same aggressive player. And to me, the reality where the Sixers beat the Celtics lies in Harden being a more aggressive version of himself with Joel Embiid in their 2-man game. And I'm just not sure if Embiid's hampered and they're not going to run too much pick and roll because of his health. What does that mean for Harden, Derek?
Yeah, I mean, look, part of the reason I was so pessimistic about Harden and Embiid and that duo is, to your point, when Harden and Embiid share the floor, it's very much their 2-man action, which normally the game starts with just Embiid post-ups. So Harden can actually throw an entry pass, which is cool. A lot of like NBA guards can't do that anymore. But then Embiid goes to work and he's the decision maker. It's his play and possession's pretty much just dictated by him. Then after like the first 4 to 6 possessions, then you get into actual pick and roll. And they've been the best pick and roll duo like by far this season. Like their efficiency is ridiculous. The Harden assists, we know what they are. Embiid, obviously the scoring leader. Like it's cool. It's cool for the regular season. But my problem is, to your point, Harden routinely will pass to Joel in these situations. And again, the regular season, it's cool because you can beat up on some bad teams that just straight up don't know what to do about Joel or have no answer. And Harden's like first and second option in those situations is to pass Joel in some regard. It's either like the behind the back and Joel goes for that midi, or it's like a little lay down or dump off and Joel goes to finish at the cup. And in Boston, that's going to be really, or I should say against Boston, that's going to be really tough to do because Rob Will and Al Horford are going to be there waiting the entire time. And that's just tougher to do against like those two as opposed to like Isaiah Jackson and like a Chris Duarte rotating against the Pacers. Like you're not going to be able to get 40 nice and easy like that. So Harden not being aggressive enough, but also really, he just isn't the finisher he used to be. I know he just went for 45. 7 of those were threes. And then at least 7 other shots were mid-range shots. He was not finishing at the cup. And he hasn't done that.
From the Nets game, where he just wasn't able to finish at the rim. It was nice to see him take the mini. Nice still counting. But yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree. He really should have been doing it all year. I mean, I'm sure he would probably say something like, he was just going to give Boston a different look and they didn't expect it. And they all went in. So it looked really, really good. I just think, especially later in the series when everyone's legs are tired, it's going to get even harder because he takes everything's like moving or leaning. Like these aren't just floaters like Houston Harden or even, Brooklyn Nets Harden had. He is like legitimately doing some fadeaways. And those shots are going to come up short a lot more because they do for everybody. So it really does concern me. And that's why, I was so pessimistic on Harden. And I'm also like a little pessimistic on the duo itself because once Boston realizes it's going to go to Embiid, 3 out of 4 times, 4 out of 5 times, they're just going to play up. And then so you take away Embiid's midi and just get under him from the jump. Now it's going to be harder because he has to put the ball on the floor. And that's when mistakes can happen and things get more physical. So, look, it's a daunting task. You knew exactly what this series would be. I just hope they can adjust. They just haven't given me a ton to believe that they will, given the success of what they did all regular season.
Yeah, that's tough, man. I'm gonna stick with my pick. I chose Boston in 6 games primarily because I question Harden's health and also Joel Embiid's availability. I thought that the Sixers would be able to get a game, but I just think Harden has to dial it up to a point to where he's looking for a shot a lot more, especially if Joel Embiid is going to be like this. And the consistency of that being enough to beat a Boston team is questionable. I think the one positive thing that they have going for them is the fact that they were able to beat them in a game where Boston had an excellent offensive game and they took advantages of their defense in certain spots. But maintaining that and upholding that for a full 7-game series is the real question. And I'm just not sure if they will be able to do it. So, Derek, I do have Boston advancing. Sorry to say.
No, it's all right. I get it.
Picks. What did you have, Derek?
I mean, look, as an objective basketball viewer and self-proclaimed ball knower, I had Boston in 7. As a fan, it's Philly in 7, absolutely. But yeah, I mean, I kind of have to see how Embiid does at the two games at home. Look, Sixers fans aren't going to be happy to hear this, but both games at home are must win. You can't go back to Boston 2-2. You just don't win the series. It's not going to happen. Boston has seen this before. You guys have been to 4 Eastern Conference Finals? With this most of this crew, like at least Smart, Tatum, Brown.
Started off last year down 0-1 to the Bucks. So this is something that they like to do apparently.
Yeah, maybe. And this is your theme, and these are good problems. If that's the case. We know Boston's got the overall record in the Embiid and Tatum and Brown era, so it's hard not to just pick Boston in the series. I'm giving the Sixers a fighting chance. I do think this is the best team we've had in this era. But I kind of alluded to it before. I mean, the rotation is going to have to be 7 guys very soon, which isn't exactly helpful, especially with the starters just getting crazy mileage. But it's going to be your starting 5 and then realistically Melton and Reed. I would love to get McDaniel some spot minutes, but if his shot isn't falling and Boston does that's just it. I mean, it's if someone picks up 2 quick fouls, McDaniels can come in, but I really don't want to see the minivan George Niang in the rest of the series. I mean, if he doesn't hit a 3 possessions in. The minivan. He is the minivan, by the way, Kiana. I didn't just make that up.
That is his actual nickname, the minivan. Yeah.
There is merch. I'm sure find a link if you're interested. But yeah, if he doesn't give you a 3 in the first 3 possessions, you're guaranteed to give up a bucket. I mean, there was one possession, probably middle of the second quarter. He checks in, it's a brick, and then the dude honestly looked like me on a bad day, getting back on defense, and it led to a Jaylen Brown corner 3, and it was nasty. It was gross, and it was that was the turning of the tide because I think it gave him a 13-point lead. and that's why I knew the game was wraps. So yeah, realistically, like Niang's probably not gonna play the rest of the series if Glenn can help himself. But it's tough.
The Niang minutes were bad.
Yeah, exactly. But even like McDaniel's minutes aren't pretty, and then we got no one else behind. Where the Celtics
be a little bit more aggressive offensively.
Right, but like the problem for him is I don't even know what that means. Because look, right. I love a George Niang drive to the basket as much as the next person because it's pretty goofy, and when it goes in, it's amazing. It's an awesome highlight. But that's not going to happen against a Boston team. I mean, he's going to have, like, his matchups are basically JT and JB sometimes because the guards are sprinting around covering everyone else, and he does not have a favorable matchup against either of those two. And if you're telling me he's trying to take Horford or Rob Will off the dribble, I mean, I'll salute his attempt. I'll salute the effort, but that is ending with the ball in the stands. So look, it's gonna be tough. I need Melt to hit his shots. He doesn't have to give me 5 threes in a quarter like he did in game 1, but he's got to give me enough. And then Reed is just there to buy and beat some time. But it's a daunting task, to be sure, but I think it can be done. I think Maxey is going to grow a ton from this series, win or lose, which is really exciting. I know he had an inefficient first game, but I mean, he had some huge clutch possessions offensively and defensively in game 1 that really led to, turning the tables. So I really hope he can just kind of build off of that.
Absolutely. Gotta say, this series is going to be a series that I'm super invested in. Every game, Jake, as you know, we have been doing a lot of basketball watch day in, day out, day in, day out. But this series, to me, almost crowns whoever is going to come out of the East. I know how much of a threat that the Heat and Knicks can be, but I just feel like
people keep saying that, and I'm like, please don't.
Listen. I definitely feel that, Kiana, but objectively speaking, these two teams are the most talented teams remaining in the playoffs. If Boston makes it out, I don't think the Heat or the Knicks are going to be enough. But the point is, both teams have a lot at stake here, because if you make it out of this series, your chances of going to the finals skyrocket, seeing how there's not a Bucks team waiting for you on the other end. So both teams I know Celtics fans are mad because all year long they had to hear about the Bucks and Chris Middleton and Jrue Holiday and all this and all that, just for him to not even be there at the end to play them. But hey, man, it is what it is. That's what these playoffs are about. Nothing is guaranteed. Roster construction is not guaranteed. You have to go out there and beat who's in front of you, and that's exactly what we're going to be able to see in this series. But if you're a Sixers fan, this is everything, because if you win this, you have a great chance at 1, breaking the curse of being a perennial second round exit, and 2, potentially making the finals as a Sixer team. That means a lot for their franchise.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, we are desperate to, end this horrific streak we've been on. I think I don't know. I've said to you before that losing this series kind of gets you the same result either way, which is roster change, a ton of questions from players, coaching staff, the front office. So it's really imperative to win this series. I mean, that's kind of the only way you secure a lot of jobs moving into next season. But for Boston, I mean, this is just as serious. I mean, the obvious, of course, is you want to get to the finals. But if you were to lose to a team that is widely considered worse than you, and you have the expectation of actually capturing the Larry O'Brien trophy this year, they've got just as much pressure, where I feel like the only other team that has the same pressure is out west in Denver. I think everyone else, we kind of talked about this, no one else has the exact same pressure, because they've kind of got some, I don't want to say built-in excuses, but lower expectations. The Lakers flip their roster at the deadline, and no one ever wins a title when you flip your team that much. You change 4 players. The Knicks are just happy to be here, straight up. The Heat are surprised they're here, and Jimmy's the only one that's going to tell you I'm not shocked. And then the Warriors, I get it. They just won the chip, but we know Golden State has not looked like Golden State that just won the trophy last year. I mean, they looked like they were in the Wembanyama race if you watched only road games. So they're shocked that they're in this position, and they're going to be fighting for their lives against the Lakers. So aside from Denver, it's really just Philly and Boston that have like these expectations. So yeah, I mean, it's going to be absolutely brutal if this team goes, the Sixers lose this series. Because it's going to be nasty work. Embiid's going to be fraudulent. I mean, hell, he's already called a fraudulent MVP.
He already is, baby. He already is.
He's already a fraudulent MVP, which is just absolutely disgusting. Harden, I mean, he'll never beat the fraud allegations. If this series doesn't go his way, Maxey is going to get Jordan Poole, comparisons, which is just gross. It's going to be nasty all around. And the worst part is I don't even think Glenn loses his job. Realistically, I mean, Rivers is probably still gonna be my coach next season, which I'm not in love with.
Brutal.
I would love to get up out of here and catch Nick Nurse before he gets hired by Milwaukee or something. But yeah, I mean that's just it. It's gonna be a hard fought bout, but yeah, a lot riding for Philly.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you guys for stopping by on the Gifted Hoops podcast. Make sure to follow Green Garden, passionate Celtics fans hosting their own spaces about their team. I will be popping in there a bit more now that I have a couple of weeks off of work coming up here. So make sure to tap in with them. Also tap in with Kiana, again, passionate Celtics fan, logical Celtics fan. I can't wait to see her reactions as the series progresses. And make sure to follow my boy Derek's podcast, Not Just Dribble. I'm happy had your back doing that, and we will also be getting back to hosting more locker room spaces as well. But my team plays tonight in 20 minutes, game 2 against the Lakers. I'm here, okay? I'm not front running.
Are y'all gonna get the split?
I predicted that this would be like a 6 to 7 game series. I did think LA would take one. I do think Golden State will get the split, but I just have to see the foul discipline and if they're going to be consistent with the turnovers, because that literally feeds what LA wants to do. But I hope they do. Starting out 2 playoff series down 2-0 is just not a great look to start, especially against a team that just plays much better defense. So not great, but I do think we can get the split here. So I'm a root for that. But any closing remarks for this episode of the Get the Who's podcast?
I just want to get my pick because y'all gave y'all. So of course I'm picking the Celtics, but I have Celtics in 6.
And
just
give me the extra game.
So what?
I said, just give me the extra game, please. Let's just make it 7. We all got 7.
I have it in 6, and I think that we win 2 in Philly. I think we drop game 5 at home, and win game 6 in Philly. That's how I feel.
Oh, that's nasty. Okay. No, I mean, joking aside. Yeah, I mean, I still have to fall on the sword here. I'm gonna say Philly in 7. We're gonna Harden already shocked me. The team already shocked me. Yeah, so I need a hard fought series. If we get a repeat of game 2, I don't know. I'm not gonna wave a white flag, but it's gonna be gross.
You'll get game 4. You'll get a repeat of game 2. If game 3 they crap the bed.
Oh jeez, yeah, I don't need that.
That's the only thing that seems to get them to play like that for 48 minutes is them to completely collapse.
Yeah, I mean, I really think game 2. I do believe it was kind of an anomaly. I think we could still definitely lose games, but not that way where everyone forgets how to shoot.
No.
I think
should be more we can get than that.
Yeah, we can get messy, but people are going to make their shots. I think that was just a terrible. We're in Boston and we all just kind of left our shots on the bus. I don't think it's going to stay that way. But yeah, I know. I mean, I appreciate the appearance, Gifted. Absolutely, everyone, please follow Kiana. I mean, I would say you and maybe Nat on Twitter are the best to talk to as far as Boston fans go. I appreciate our conversations. It's even with our respective agendas, it's never nasty. We can actually talk ball. You don't call Embiid a fat slob. So it's fantastic. It's great.
Embiid. Yeah, there's a Twitter community. It's called the Green Garden, and the page, there's actually a Twitter page as well. It's the Green Garden, but the is TH, 2 E's. And you can follow. We're trying to do more spaces. We've done spaces pregame for the first 2 games. And we're trying to start to do pre and post game spaces. So if y'all want to tap in, if you're a Celtics fan, we would also love to have Philly fans come in so we can hear both sides. Please follow the page. That would be greatly appreciated.
Absolutely. Both of their links will be in the description. Appreciate everyone who made it this far. I'm working on getting this podcast available on iTunes as well, but they're trying to hold me. We're going to get there though, okay? We're going to figure it out. But I'll catch you guys in the next episode. Pray for a Warriors win tonight or just good competitive basketball. And as always, appreciate basketball, people. Peace.
Bye.
Peace.